when I talk to my team, I say, conduct your research like a gardener, tend to it, make sure you're helping it grow, help flourish, and allow for that magic to sort of, you know, meet those demands. There will be days where something happens and you just have to go all out, and that's when the
Right.
storm comes and you have to cover up your plants. But then there's most of the days where you could just sit back and enjoy and look at your garden and see what you've grown. And so that's really, I think, the most important thing. If you don't do that, it's going to be exhausting because we will never stop learning. We'll never stop having to catch up. We're always going to be in the race. And so that's something I can promise pretty much any person who's in cybersecurity, is that you will always be in the race as long as there's computers. And I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
Welcome to Blue Team Diaries, the podcast that celebrates and honors the professionals who work tirelessly to defend their organizations and those who build tools to support defenders. In each episode, host Peter Manav invites his guests to share their stories and experiences in a fun and lighthearted conversation. Blue Team Diaries is sponsored by Stamus Networks, a global provider of network-based threat detection and response solutions. Learn more at stamus-networks.com.
Hey, TJ Nelson is the Director of Armor for the INSIG Group at Recorded Future, overseeing multiple teams of researchers and analysts who provide technical analysis across advanced reversing, malware operations, and reconnaissance. Before Recorded Future, he worked as the Director of Detection Research at SecureWorks, leading teams responsible for technical analysis and development of detection content for various security products. He has experience in malware research and incident response and has held various positions at Cybersecurity and Arbor Networks. TJ organizes his local security B-Side conference and leads a local information security group. In addition to numerous industry certifications, TJ is currently also pursuing his PhD. TJ Nelson, welcome. Good to have you here. Let's dive straight into it, if that's all right with you, of course. I know you're a man of experience and you've seen a lot, and you do a lot. Is it possible if you can share a cool project that you've been working on recently?
Yeah, so one of my interest areas right now is really using AI and LLMs to help basically take cybersecurity concepts and leverage LLMs to do them faster. So around detections, pulling out insights out of data, and also summarization. So those are some of the things that I've been actively working on over the past couple months.
All right, very cool. So do you see like a light at the end of the tunnel, or I mean, is it looking good, or, or...
Definitely. And so the growth of AI is like super fast. So keeping
Okay.
up with all of the new tools that come out is exciting to say the least. So really learning which tools work for your application is probably 90% of it. And so being able to play around with different tools. There's one that I'm currently using, Guidance, that allows, and it's actually made by Microsoft, and it's an open source tool that you could just take an LLM and it helps guide the responses so that you get more natural responses towards what you were expecting. I think the hallucination portion of LLMs has been something that scares a lot of people, especially when you want to
Right,
work with it in production. So
right.
being able to have that little guardrail around it has been super helpful and has been leading to a lot of good results.
But that's very good to hear. Actually, that's super cool to hear. And you mentioning you're having positive feedback, positive results around that, and things like that. Are there any, out of curiosity, if it's okay to share any feedback, are the downsides more than the upsides, or on contrary, what I've heard you, right? The upsides are more than the downsides
Yeah,
in that
definitely.
respect. Is it
Definitely. Yeah.
is it a lot of like work and effort to get to that level, or it's easier than you thought, for example?
Oh, it's a lot of trial and error. So I think once you do a lot of trial and error, eventually you'll come to one prompt or one set of instructions that will help you actually get what you want from now. But from a summarization standpoint, it's really easy because a lot of tools and a lot of companies have been just making chatbots over their data sets, which that's very straightforward. But when we're talking about instant response, network defending. There's a lot of nuance that the LLM has to understand in order to really give you the right answer. Because as you and I know, certain malicious traffic may not look malicious, or certain
Mm-hmm.
non-malicious traffic may look malicious. And being able to understand those nuances and those edge cases, and then give the right information, is probably a difference between tens of dollars worth of wasted resources, or thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth
Or
of
life
wasted
and death,
resources.
actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely cool. Um, well, along those lines, and I'm sure that's a lot of work, and there's a lot of actually discussion and talks around that, especially nowadays. And not only in the cyber industry, but in general in terms of AI enabled and machine learning help and similar things like that. Um, is it possible, if okay with you, of course, to share like an oh crap or a close call moment where you actually something bad really nearly happened and you actually managed to avoid it? Um, i- if is it possible to share?
Well, I have a bunch of cases, like where, like when
All
I'm
right.
working on LLMs personally, like sometimes I'll be testing out certain features of a new open source LLM and things along those lines, where it would give you information where you're like, this is not right. And I've been playing around with a lot of orchestration and automation around those things. And you can only imagine what happens when you have an LLM that has control over your PC, and it thinks that a certain process is malicious. Then all of a sudden it starts closing out that process, and that might
Mhm.
have been your very important application that makes your company lots of money. Like, those type of things are really
Sure.
important. So I've never had that moment directly, but I could definitely see that happening when I'm doing some of these tests, and I see some of these edge cases and these hallucinations, and where, like, if we were able to fully trust this LLM and let it do what it thinks it should do, it might have caused a lot of issues and problems.
Right, right, sure. But I mean, I guess that's similar to everything else we
Hmm.
humans do, kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's no that's no new concept to us. We
Yeah.
take something and we make we make it or we control it and things like that. Do you think though it's um are you satisfied with the responses? Do you think it is actually safe and manageable after you've done a good amount of research and testing and all that stuff? Do you think that's actually something really good to go ahead with and implement, and you're confident with it, or you think besides that you still need some guardrails, so to speak, and
Oh yeah.
you still need to kind of watch out for certain
Definitely,
moments?
definitely with guardrails. I think that a lot of people would think that you could just throw a lot of data at the LLM and it'll just spit out whatever you want, but that's not the case. You have to really give it a good a set of instructions in order to actually get the information out. And you want to make sure that when you have tasks, it breaks it up and does each individual portion of the task to get what you want out of it. And so that is probably the most important thing that I've been learning through this process of how to actually break up those tasks to make sure that it's logical for an LLM to take on, and where we can actually build that trust and really be able to perform actions based off its output.
Okay, okay, got it. So you mean like break up instead of giving it the whole thing and trying to figure it out in one kind of go, break it up on in certain steps or tasks and then combine those one after the other,
Absolutely.
so to speak. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, definitely.
um Question out of curiosity, and it might be, I don't know, hot or marketing topic question, that's not the point, but there is certain implementations of AI that seem to be very, very successful,
Hmm.
um, and certain implementations that seem not to be. And for example, Chat GPT, Gemini, all those things, I mean, I'm using them too. They're actually, in a lot of cases, they're giving very good answers to my questions. For example, as
Yep.
simple as that and things like that. Do you think there is or do you know, what's your view anyway? Or is there a difference between that kind of success, if we put it that way, Chat GPT, let's say, those systems, Gemini and the likes of it, and the same implementation but from a security perspective, like cybersecurity perspective, let's say?
Yeah. Definitely night and day, because what you're looking at, especially with some of those like general purpose models, is that they're willing to have a conversation with you. You ask it, hey, what should I be wearing today? This is the weather. And like it will
Right.
tell you, yeah, you probably wear light clothing or something along those lines. But like when we're talking about cybersecurity, and especially like security applications, you're actually looking for determination. So understanding whether something has and is it actually malicious or not. You're also looking for impact. You want to know how bad it is and then also you need to look for what your mitigation steps are going to be. And those things require a lot of different factors, not only technical too, because you're a part of a business most of the time and you have to understand the business implications of doing certain actions. Computers aren't going to know the business implications of a particular action unless you give that information. So I could see a lot of cases where people use AI and LLMs to make determinations around their business that are coming from a security standpoint, but may actually not be the best thing for the
Right.
business from a financial standpoint.
Got you. Okay, so you basically you need actually we need to learn how to use it properly as well. It's not just
Absolutely.
something. Okay, understood. Thank you. All right, maybe a little bit different topic. What's your go-to tool every day? Like, what is it, the one tool? Do you have such a tool that you actually, I can't do my job without this one tool?
Yeah.
What would that be?
So my go-to tool is probably Jupyter Notebooks and Pandas. I started using those probably around like a very long time, many years ago. And I feel like I
Awesome.
use that every single day to answer not just cybersecurity questions, but like everyday questions in my life. Sometimes you're trying to just figure out, I have a bunch of options and I need to figure out like how do I stack those, and just really just putting them into a data frame and being able to like pull out the different segments of it. A lot of things can be solved in a spreadsheet, and I think that Jupyter Notebooks and using pandas within Jupyter Notebooks really allows you to have the power of a coder while still using like that
Right.
spreadsheet type of Excel type lifestyle.
I was introduced to Jupyter Playbooks by a colleague of mine, and by no means I'm not an expert in things like that, but I really like the concept. I got hooked up to it. The pandas and all that stuff. From my
Yeah.
experience, I didn't know, and when I saw how it functioned, how it was, I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah.
actually quite useful, actually, for a change and all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I,
yeah, for me personally, sorry, you struck a note there. For me personally, it's been revealing. Even after so many years, I actually insecurity and in IT in general, I didn't know about it. And
yeah.
a colleague of mine was like, "This is what we're gonna do. This is how it looks like." I'm like,
It's actually like
that's right."
one of the best ways to like work, because a lot of times, especially when we're trying to do analysis, we're doing it in segments. Like I don't think about my whole research plan or investigation plan or analysis plan all in one go. It's always just like I have a question. I'm going to prompt that question. I sort of do a little bit of experimentation. If it works, then I move on. If it doesn't, I pivot. And Jupyter Notebooks allows you to do that with the cells, and being able to have like individual thoughts and tasks be, like basically confined in those cells and then move from one to another. It really helps you tell that story of what analysis or what you're trying to get accomplished, which is great.
I couldn't agree more. Not bad for an open source
Yeah,
software.
no, definitely not.
I couldn't agree more. Um, so everything we do nowadays is kind of complex. Everything that our job, for example, in cybersecurity, the complexity is just daily additions of complexity that come in and out. So it's not as straightforward as it was maybe, I don't know, 25 years ago. And so it's also like a high pace, high power environment. You know what I mean? It's not like, in a lot of cases, at least from my experience and from my view, you cannot say like, "Hey, it's 5 p.m. See you later, guys." The malicious actors, the bad actors, they're not. They have no working hours, so you kind of, there's a lot of cases that you have to take the stand and actually, for example, respond or do that extra step, that extra mile. So it could be demanding. It's a long
Yes.
way for me of saying that. It could be very demanding and all that stuff. If you have one piece of advice to give to somebody thinking about becoming a cyber defender, what would that be?
I would say, and this is something I usually tell my teams, is basically conduct your research or analysis like a gardener and sort of tend to it and not really like try to do it all at once. Really, a lot of it is that we're in the day in and day out fight of trying to get ahead, stay ahead of the actors. They have an unfair advantage, to be honest. They have the time. They can strike
Mhm.
whenever they want to. They can, release things, and we sort of have to sort of just deal with the
It's their
changes
choice,
that
yeah.
they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it's really motivated by them. And a lot of times when you're doing gardening, the elements, you can't control the weather. You can't control how your plants are going to grow. You just have to react to it and make sure that you have sort of a good understanding in a mindful manner when you're dealing with your garden. So when I talk to my team, I say, you know, conduct your research like a gardener, tend to it, make sure you're helping it grow, help flourish, and allow for that magic to sort of, you know, meet those demands. There will be days where something happens and you just have to go all out, and that's when the
All right.
storm comes and you have to cover up your plants. But then there's most of the days where you could just sit back and enjoy and look at your garden and see what you've grown. And so that's really, I think, the most important thing. If you don't do that, it's going to be exhausting because we will never stop learning. We'll never stop having to catch up. We're always going to be in the race. And so that's something I can promise pretty much any person who's in cybersecurity is that you will always be in the race as long as there's computers. And I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, true that, true that. But so, what made you choose cybersecurity? I mean, how did it come to be?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I used to play a lot of games, like a lot of games, and one of the big games that I used to play was Counter-Strike. And so I did the whole thing where I joined teams and we had our little groups and cliques, and we all had our own web pages and everything. And my team got like pretty prominent. Like we had a lot of
All right,
allies
all
and
right.
rivals, and so like we'd have scrims and all that stuff. And one day, someone defaced our website and I was like, this can't happen. Like it really got to me. I was very
Okay.
invested. And so I learned how to do analysis. I just looked at the logs. I saw like exactly what was going on. I was like, oh, this is cool. I didn't know that like people could do that. And at the time, the person who was on my team was in cybersecurity and they said, well, you should just go to school for this. This is exactly what like I do and I do analysis for. And so that sort of jumped me into that realm and I just never looked back since and it worked out.
I immediately have a few more questions to follow up, but like, so Counter Strike is, yeah, is that game of choice number one? What's number two? Out of
Uh,
curiosity.
right now, I actually switched to Call of Duty, so I've grown up a
Okay.
little bit.
All right.
Not too
Okay.
much, but I've
Okay.
grown up a little bit. So yeah, that's
Okay.
that's
Okay.
mine.
Okay. Excellent. But all right. So, if it's if it's that demanding and all that stuff, like, what makes you stay in you always have to be on top of things, right? You
Hmm.
have to always hustle. It's not something that you just do one day and next day you're repetitive where it's fine. There's always something new. What
Yep.
motivates you to work in this field?
Yep.
Why do you keep up
You
the
just have to enjoy it, right? Like you find something you like, and then you find a way to sort of sustain that like, and you basically dig in. And so, like, I enjoy every bit of cybersecurity. I love reading other people's blogs. I love talking to my friends about cybersecurity. It sort of consumes a lot of my mental space most of the time when I'm not with family and whatnot. So I think that's really what drives it. And like, I think we're in like a time of our world right now where like that you have a lot of options to really just pursue things that you like and figure out how to monetize those things. And so like I was just lucky enough to find something I like and then
awesome,
get paid doing it.
awesome, yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. um and question again, out of curiosity, there's many opinions about this, and but I'm just looking for your view, so to speak. No strings attached. Do you think, in your view, with your experience, do you think like you can go to college for cybersecurity education, and regardless where the college is, I'm not talking
Hmm.
specific areas, but you can go to college and get a pretty decent kind of education or first basic level there, and you have to build on top, or you are more thinking, or your view is more like, uh you have to learn it all on the field all by yourself, so to speak. Like, what do you
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like?
This is a this is a big question, and I think a lot of,
Indeed,
especially
indeed.
people people with like a lot of seniority, we think about this stuff a lot. And I've come to the point where I think that you need a little bit of both, to be honest with you,
Mm,
because what happens is the hands-on learning and actually being in it. Like I've met a lot of researchers and some former hackers that literally have only learned by just doing, and they lack some
right.
of the acumen on the business side in order to be effective. And for all intents and purposes, we are a part of business. We're a function of
Mhm.
business. Security is not cannot dictate what a company does unless it is in the in the I guess the in the like for the value of the business, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So theoretically we're just an arm of the business, and if you don't understand the business, then you're not going to be that effective of an arm of the business. So that is that where I would say formal education really does help. Now I do understand that, like, and I've gone through a lot of formal education, I'm in a PhD program right now, is that like there is a lot of things that lack in that form of education system. So like you sort of understand like the broader aspects
Mhm.
of what cybersecurity is, but you don't really get to know like what it feels like to connect to a remote server or to run your first Metasploit exploit and things along those lines unless you're in a
We need to
particular
help each
program.
other. Yeah.
Yeah, so you need to seek out those hands-on learnings. Do CTFs, do like different things like Hack the Box and things along those lines. Like there are a lot of opportunities to really like test out what you have, because that's what businesses need, is someone to be able to jump in, orient, and then operate.
You have a fresh idea or a fresh approach and things like, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you for that insight. Much appreciated. Um, is there anything that you thought is like scarier than actually is, which could be stopping people from pursuing a career in cybersecurity, as it is very demanding and ever changing and all that stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of what like a lot of the terminology and a lot of like the things that come out, people think that cybersecurity is this like very high voltage tower that you cannot ascend to. But it is really simple. It's, bad guys trying to, find creative ways to get inside environments and networks and then use them to their advantage. And when you think about that in that term, and like really just think about like those are humans on the other side of that system, and they're just as flawed as you are, it's a lot easier
Hmm.
to overcome a lot of their stuff. Some of the most magical investigations and insights that I've gotten from research are just from just understanding that minor flaw that a malicious actor has had. Maybe they were on Stack Overflow asking about a segment of code, and then you saw that exact code segment, and you're like, oh, this email address might
I
be
see it
related to
somewhere.
this malware. And then all of a sudden you have this like connection where you're able to actually identify one of the actors there, or maybe they just haven't like cleaned their binaries, and you could see in their
Hmm.
the debug string of the actual like where that PDB is located, and you can see like, oh, username blah blah blah. Like those type of things are like
No
those
way.
little bits of
Okay.
magic that, like, if you understand that people are flawed and sometimes they're just trying to get through their day just as much as you are, that you might be able to find some really cool stuff. And like, you can sort of take that cybersecurity stuff and like really wrap your head around it versus just saying I need to go and get my sec plus and this and this and this and this before I can even touch a computer. That's not true. It's a lot easier when you just take it bite by bite and just realize that on the other side of those computers there's people that are just as flawed as you are, and so you're no different from they are, and so you have an opportunity to sort of do great things.
So we share a couple of commonalities, like we're human on both sides, and then dedication as well, and things like that. But in your experience, the malware actors or
Mhm.
even the higher level APT groups, are they like sloppy and they don't care because they cannot be hatched depending on where they operate from? Are they like super smart and dedicated? Or are there like, meh, if it happens, it happens. We don't really care,
Yeah.
type of thing. Have you seen one type more than the other, or how is it in your view?
Yeah, I think it mirrors the spectrum of defenders, right? Like
Everything, yeah.
there's a large portion that are just getting it done, and they sort of kind of sloppy, get that stuff done, write their code, and then if it works, and send it. And I think that there's a large portion of the criminal cyber actor ecosystem that is like that. I mean, if you look at any of the .NET rats or even the .NET info stealers, like you could see that like some of that code is just copy pasted from some other open source malware, and they're just sort of learning as they go from there. But then there's also really sophisticated actors that are, sponsored by nations and things along those lines, where you're going to actually see that really strong and like well-grounded OPSEC. So like it really does. It's a spectrum of people. There's a large amount of actors out there, and they just are people, so they're going to be very diverse in what they
Right,
do and how
right,
they do it.
right. All right. I don't want to stay my welcome. I can go on for a few more hours, but I don't want to stay with my welcome here. But final question: would you like to give a shout out to any mentors that helped you?
Oh yeah. So I would think that one of the biggest things that you could possibly do is get a little bit from everybody, right? And so like there's been a lot of people that I've just learned a lot from. I'd probably, if I, there's a lot of people to list, but if I had to list some people, I would probably say like people like Josh Stroshine is really helpful in just understanding some of the academic side of cybersecurity. Some of the people like Paul Burbage was I would say he's one of my colleagues and also mentors, because he's taught me some of like the style of doing certain things in cybersecurity and research. um, a lot of people that like you sort of have these small interactions with and just say like, and you're like, I don't know how to do this, and they show you something and you're like, oh, that was a lot easier than I thought it was. People like those are like invaluable, and I've gotten so much of that over my tenure in cybersecurity
Right.
that I can't even count. But I think those two people would probably be the people off the top of my head that recently just always are helpful and help out a lot.
Very cool to hear. I mean, I have the pleasure of knowing Josh personally, so I do attest for that as well. So a privilege indeed. Um, TJ, awesome to have you with us, sir. Thank you very much for your help, for being part of the blue teams out there. Thank you very much for everything that you're doing, and yeah, keep up the good work, keep up the fight, and yeah, you and other blue team members like you, sir, I think are inspiration to younger generation or upcoming generation of colleagues that come up. So thank you very much again for being
Absolutely.
on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for celebrating and honoring the defenders with Blue Team Diaries. You can find this and all our previous episodes on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you're interested in learning more about our sponsor, Stamus Networks, please visit stamus-networks.com.